All right, Rich Monroe here with B&B Investing Group. Thanks everybody for jumping on. As a reminder, B&B Investing Group helps investors navigate the short-term rental model. So whether you're doing acquisitions, the rental arbitrage model, or managing. And we usually like to have investors on that we kind of walk through their story to see what they experienced and see how we can all learn together. So I'm happy to have a good friend of mine on, Matt Floyd, on this week to chat about his business. Matt, thanks for jumping on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, honored to be here. Thanks for having me on, Rich. Excited to chat with the group and share what I've learned and pass it along. Right, I was a new investor probably 6 years ago now. Was just getting started with my first property after reading and researching for about a year or two and going to meetups in San Diego where I'm based as much as I could. And then ended up buying my first fourplex in Wisconsin for $55,000. So if anyone out there doesn't believe that those deals are out there, they're out there. You just have to look in rural, parts of the country. And, that was a great first deal. I got to learn everything on a deal where it didn't have a lot of risk, but happy to kind of jump into all of that as we jump through. But happy to be here, Rich.
Yeah, awesome. So how long ago was that?
That was November 2018. And, I'll never forget, right? Because that's my first business and the first, acquisition. And at the time, I was so nervous about it. And in hindsight, you look back at it and you say, wow, that's such a small deal. But that first deal opens the door to all the other deals. And I was able to quickly go from there. But I learned everything from that first deal. It was a fourplex. Two of the units were unoccupied. The other two units were only renting at $220 a month. And it was run down. It had deferred maintenance. The roof needed to be repaired. And the owner was in her 90s and she was ready to take the cash and move on, right? And actually retire. So we were able to pick that up, renovate the units, put a new roof on it, put a new front porch on it. So there was a lot of expense that went into the property, but now it rents out about $2,000 a month between the four units, if not already up to $2,200 a month. So it cash flows about $1,000 profit a month, that property.
Very cool. And so you kind of kept it as a long-term rental?
That one's long-term. So I went long-term multifamily first. I read the ABCs of Real Estate Investing, which is Ken McElroy's book, one of the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. And I literally just copied exactly how he underwrote the property, exactly how he put a 3-step plan in place to improve it. What was the plan to increase revenue and lower expenses? And so that book is just a really great textbook, basically, for how to step-by-step buy your first place, and one that's going to cash flow well and has low risk because it's multifamily.
And so when you did that deal, you had a full-time job, or what was your main career then?
Yeah, so I was in software sales, working for a great company, taking any commissions, living below my means so that I had money that I could save up. So that was the first step, save up money. Second step was figure out where to invest it. And so I still worked for my W-2 job until 2020, until last year. We left finally to run the business full time. So
That's
5 years of investing and building a business before I left the W-2.
That's impressive. A lot of folks either just take a plunge and a deep dive, or that's a very cool segue into it. And so as you got your long-term rental stuff started, how did you get into short-term rental?
Yeah, so in 2018 we bought that fourplex for $55,000. The next year we bought a 7-unit also in Wisconsin for $165,000. So another great deal there. So we still have those 11 units in Wisconsin. 10 of them are long-term. One is short-term. It's a unique old barn loft style situation, just a unique property, and it didn't fit the normal long-term rental model. So once I got into vacation rentals, we finished that renovation and we've been renting that out at 3 times the rent of the long-term rentals. But it is a unique unit. It's a bigger unit. So still have those 11 units in Wisconsin multifamily. And then I was going to the real estate meetup here in San Diego, taking notes, learning from all the established investors. And this guy, Craig, goes up and introduces himself, and he's presenting on a vacation rental townhome that he bought in Nashville. This was in 2019. he shared all the numbers. Here's what I bought it for. Here's how much I put in to design it and furnish it. And here's what it's making annually. And his cash flow was about 3,000 profit per month annualized over the year. And my mind was blown. I said, man, if I get 3 of those, if I just get 3 of those, I can replace my W-2 income and I can be out of a job. As opposed to, you look at multifamily and I'm thinking I need to get to 100 doors before I can get enough revenue to passive income to replace my W-2 income. So it got me really excited. I took him out to lunch. I think I paid for a round of golf or something like that. And then next thing you know, we said, hey, we should start a business. Why don't we start a business doing some arbitrage in San Diego, looking because rents were much cheaper. Long-term rents were much cheaper at the time. And the vacation rent income was great and still is great in San Diego as a market. So that was the next move before I even bought anything as a vacation rental. We started a business and we got through, and this was December 2019. Craig and I decided, hey, let's put in this amount into the business. If it works, great. If it fails, we'll have learned a lot and we'll call it as tuition. And so we've always viewed it that way, to say we're going to try our best. And if the business doesn't work out, then, we don't hold each other accountable to that. We don't hold each other hostage for that reason. We're in it trying to learn as much as we can and be successful. And that was December 2019. We got 3 leases in San Diego in January and February 2020. We bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of furniture. We personally put it all in and designed it and set it all up ourselves. And, bloody knuckles from the little, the hex, you know what I'm saying? The little things you screw everything in, the little hex tools. So much of that. And then got up and running, got a whole bunch of bookings. We were off and running in end of February, start of March. And then COVID hit 2 weeks later and we lost 60 grand in bookings in a week. And we thought our business was done just like that. So that was trial by fire, and we made it through and we're still going strong, 5 years later.
That was a scary time. At the time, I had about 32 master leases in Atlanta, and probably around the same amount of bookings that got canceled within a very short order. But it was a 45-day scary window. But once everything started opening back up, it was all off to the races from there, as you probably experienced as well.
So did you go midterms, Rich? Did you go midterm for a little while? We went midterm.
You went midterm? No, I kept it as short term. I kind of renegotiated some of the leases and got some deferments. And as this kind of the staycation started kicking in and people started getting cooped up, and a lot of people came from the North and Midwest to come down to the South where it was warmer. And so we got a lot of activity in the short-term rental space, probably 20-30% bump over the prior year.
Yeah, it was a big bump, and we went midterm temporarily because number one person was there short term, and she was on her way down to Brazil to work at the consulate, and all the borders shut down. So she ended up staying with us, and we just kept renting to her for months. So that ended up being a great midterm. We had another guy who wanted to come in for work, and we basically said, we just want to try to break even right now so we can get through this period. We did renegotiate some of the leases with the owners. They were really helpful. We basically lowered the amount with the understanding that we would catch up later on just to be able to get through it. So that was a creative, negotiation we had with some of the landlords. And then, and then we were still at our W-2s. So there was probably $500 to $1,000 a month that we were losing after all expenses. And we just covered that cost because we were able, because we still had our W-2s. We weren't fully reliant, and we didn't go fully all in. So we had a backstop, and we were able to make it through.
Nice. So let's back up a second on your long-term rentals. When you had that one that was a little bit bigger and you were making 2 to 3 times the revenue, were you not tempted to convert some of the other ones in Wisconsin?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I have thought about it a couple of times, but I do have a property manager that I hired to manage the other 10 units. And I think that the amount of effort that it would take and time that it would take me for a small amount of return. Now, like I said, the one rental unit that I have there that's performing well It's a big loft style space. It's kind of a unique space. It has 7 bedrooms, but they're all in the same hallway. So it's great for groups. It's really
Yeah.
unique. It's not going to work as a long-term rental, but it works great as a short-term rental. Everyone gets their own room. They have a common space they can hang out. We built a beautiful deck off the back so they can all hang out and enjoy the weather in the summertime. It's very seasonal, so it's great during the summer, and then I find some midterms during the winter time. So I don't think that model would be the best model to use for the smaller 1 to 2 bedroom apartments.
Got it. Got it. Well, I mean, for me, when I started with long-term rentals as well, mostly single family homes, and it was a light bulb moment when I looked at how much revenue you could make with short-term rentals. And so anything that I had at the time, I basically converted over to short-term, and the ones that didn't really fit, I ended up selling them out of the portfolio, and just kind of had the core focus, with long-term rentals, and you probably have a pretty steady flow of tenants there, but I got burnt out kicking people because they didn't pay, kicking people out and having to rehab the property again, and then just banging my head against the wall, not making any money with it. So I made an about face and kind of committed to short-term rentals 9 years ago, and I haven't looked back since. So it depends on the property though.
I kind of like running both models, and I think the reason why, in my opinion, is that the hospitality industry is very volatile, as we know, right? Depending on discretionary spending, people don't have to go on vacation. So it's an election year this year. We're seeing the effects of the election year and the inflation come and hit people in their wallets. And so revenue is down from where it was during COVID, when the money was free and flowing from the government and we were all feeling good, right? And everyone was cooped up and everyone just needed to get out. So it does fluctuate a lot year over year. And what you may have underwritten originally may not be what comes to reality the next year or the year after. Maybe it goes up, maybe it goes down. So I like having a backdrop or a backstop of some multifamilies, and that are really consistent. They're in working class neighborhoods in the Midwest. Even during COVID, I never had anybody that even asked me for relief on payment. Right? It's just very consistent. There's not much that changes, and it cash flows fantastic. So I think Avery Carl does this as well. They use the revenue from the vacation rentals to continue building their multifamily portfolio, which is the main base of their financial security, because the multifamilies, I don't know if you looked at the stat, but during the Great Recession, I think something like 0.5% or maybe 2% of multifamilies were in distress or were foreclosed upon during the Great Recession, where up to 30% of single family homes were. So I remember reading about that, and I said at that time, multifamily is probably the most stable asset I can buy and have cash flow at all times.
That makes sense.
So I like them both.
Have you done anything in multifamily with short-term rentals?
I haven't. I've it's a little bit trickier in the markets that we're in because the regulations are pretty clear and laid out. Like in San Diego, for instance, you can only have one permit in your name, so it's a little trickier to even do a bigger arbitrage play like that. But there were a lot of arbitrage opportunities to, like you said, partner with apartment owners and take a floor or take a portion of it, and it's a win-win for everybody. That's through regulation, that's getting harder and harder. But there are a lot of unincorporated smaller towns where there's no hotels, that nobody really has a place to stay. And I think that the opportunity to buy a multifamily, whether it's a duplex, fourplex, eightplex, something like that, underwrite it as a long-term rental, make sure that it makes sense as a long-term rental, and then try it out. Maybe do half the units or eventually all of the units as vacation rentals. It's kind of like a boutique hotel. And a lot of communities are going to welcome that because, hey, family members coming into town, I don't have room for you. Go stay right here, as opposed to needing to go 20 minutes to the next town. Growing up in rural Wisconsin, I know how hard it is sometimes to find a good place to stay in some of these small towns that can't support full hotels.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's take another step back. So you did this rental arbitrage partnership with Craig, and you guys are killing it. Is it that point where you said, I think I'm good with the W-2, I can kind of put in my notice, or what, was there something else that triggered that?
So that was 2020. We really got up and running there. Made it through COVID. To sigh of relief. All right, now we're doing well. And then I focused on my W-2 and just was trying to do as best I could at that W-2 to get as much income as I could, because I knew that I had a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew what my vision was. I knew where I wanted to be, and I knew I wanted to quit the job. And so that gave me a time frame where I could work and focus extremely hard at doing the best I could at my job, because it was a means to an end, as opposed to someone that's looking at it, hey, I'm doing this for 20 years, I'm just going to skate by. I was
Yeah.
really motivated. And so I saved a lot. I saved more than 50, 70% of my income. I did really well at work. And then I bought 4 properties in 2021, all in quick succession. We bought 3 townhomes in Nashville, emulating the model that Craig used. The prices were already about twice as much as what he paid for them, but I bought 4 bedrooms, he bought 3 bedrooms. So there's a little difference there. So we bought 3 townhomes throughout that year. And then we bought our primary home in San Diego as well, where we live here. And we house hack. So even here in San Diego, we were looking for a property where we could earn income while living there. And that was a requirement for us, because we need to offset our living expenses in order to have the opportunity to leave our job and be able to have the freedom that we want to travel and have time freedom in our lives. So
Love
we
it.
bought a 6-bed, 4-bath here in San Diego. We immediately renovated a portion of it, closed it off. It was very easy. We just had to create a new exterior entrance, closed off the interior, rearranged a couple of the walls pretty quickly, and then furnish it and design it, and we're up and running. And so we live in the 4-3 side, and we run as an Airbnb the 2-bed, 1-bath side, and that nets us about it grosses about 40 to 50,000 a year, the 2-bed, 1-bath side. So it pays for a good chunk of the mortgage.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, there's nothing like having it paid, and then it frees you up to focus on other growth opportunities, because you've kind of got that stability there.
Yeah.
I know an investor here in Atlanta that does that. With he and his wife do it consistently every year. So they'll sell the one they're in and they'll move to the next one, or they'll keep the one that they bought the year before and keep it moving. And so it's a very interesting strategy where you can house hack and have real estate growth at the same time. It's good stuff.
Yeah, if I still had the W-2, I think I would be able to continue doing that. But once I left the W-2, I'm not as bankable. So it's
Yeah,
a little harder
right.
to get those loans, and I could look at DSCR options, but we're comfortable here for the time being. But I mean, I think that's great because number one, there's a couple of things there. Number one, you get to continue, kind of moving up and continuing to get that appreciation. But
Yeah,
number two, if you live in your home for 2 years, you get to avoid the capital gains if you're married up to 500,000. So if you renovate like we did, we renovated the kitchen, we created an open concept. So my wife did all of her interior design skills, and we've improved the value of the home. We forced appreciation through renovation. If we sold the property now that we've been here for 3 years, we wouldn't have to pay capital gains on $500,000. That saves us 25% of that, which is $125,000 is what that saves us. So the government
absolutely.
incentivizes us to keep the real estate market moving. And that's a huge incentive. That's a huge incentive.
Yeah, we just sold a house that we had as a primary up on Lake Lanier in Georgia, and we acquired it as a full gut rehab. It was originally built in 1960, and so we sold it with a sizable profit and took advantage of that $500,000 for sure.
Yeah.
Non-taxable revenue.
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. So you got the townhouses. Are you also managing as well, or are you just self-managing the arbitrage and the ones that you own?
Yeah, great question. So between Craig and I, we were managing these arbitrages, the 3, and we had those 3 for a while. And then we were buying our own. So individually, I own some and Craig owns some. And we were buying in Nashville and then in Phoenix and then in San Diego. And sure enough, we ended up with 13 vacation rentals between his and ours, that we had personally. And so we said, okay, well, we already know how to manage them because we're managing these arbitrages. why don't we just bring our own in, make it more legitimate? And then we started getting referrals from the realtors that we were buying from. They said,
Yeah.
hey, you guys are managing enough now. Here's a referral. Here's a referral. We had friends, we had colleagues that we were sharing our success with on some of these investments. They were going and buying their own and asking us to manage for them. So it was a lot of word of mouth that we started growing, and we added a couple more arbitrages. And next thing you know, we're up to 20 properties, which is a pretty decent size. So we started taking it, we went to STR Wealth conference, and we realized, we were still working W-2 where a lot of other people had already quit well before we had. So we said, all right, let's put a plan in place. Let's put a date in place. Let's hire a team. Let's set up the operations. Let's upgrade all of our softwares and automations, and let's take this thing seriously. And that's what we did. We said January 2023, January 1st, we'd quit our jobs, and we did it. He did it in March. I did it in April. So we were a couple months late on it, but holding each other accountable to it, letting everybody know, and letting, not just holding it inside, but telling everybody else, holds you accountable to actually making the jump and taking the leap. It's not easy to let go of that backstop and let go of that safety net and all of the, the benefits and insurance and everything. But once you do, it was the most freeing feeling to me. It's been great.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's been a while for me since I left the corporate world. It was right after 9/11, actually, in 2002 that I made the plunge. So it's been, but I know exactly what you mean. It's scary as heck right before you do it, but once you do it, there's no wanting to return to working again. So
yeah, I would say, it's still a bit scary, right? And this is a year and a half later. It's not that goes away per se, but it's just the fact that I wake up excited to go and attack the day, and I'm excited for the meetings on my calendar, and I'm excited to go and play the game of business and try to find a different way to improve it. And every now and then you have a breakthrough that you never would have expected, that that makes things a lot easier, or financially improves the business. But you really have to just work your way trial and error through a lot of things in order to get to some of these bigger breakthroughs. So I know that's not very specific, but I don't know if you felt the same way, Rich, where what you started with in the business, you were grinding it out and doing everything yourself and wearing all the hats and trying to figure it out. And then as you get bigger, you start to get specialized, and you have other team members that specialize. And then all of a sudden the door really opens up, because everyone is working towards the same goal, specialized, as opposed to generalists.
Absolutely. It's all about delegating those pieces that are all the busy work to kind of allow you to free you up to kind of figure out what's next. So speaking of that, what's next? What's on the horizon for Stay Classy Homes?
Yeah. So, I mean, now we've been operating for 5 years as a management company, as a legitimate management company here in San Diego. We're growing our business locally here. And, and then instead of growing one by one, now that we have the base and we have the team and we have the operations and the automations, we felt comfortable adding more. And instead of going and trying to sell one by one to each new client and each new property, I started to look around for some acquisitions to see if we can get a bundle of properties all at once, underwrite the revenue, take on a little bit of debt for the first time in the business. This is the first time we'll be taking on debt, but have a full understanding of what we're getting into, that we can purchase a bundle of properties and cash flow at once, scale up a little bit faster with the debt, with the leverage, and then pay off that debt and own that completely outright. So it allows us to grow faster now that we're ready for it. But I think the key there is that we really had to get our operations dialed in, make that kind of a jump. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Are you able to do that remotely, or is it in a local market?
It's going to be in Hawaii. It'll be Kauai and Oahu. So it is a remote market for us. But we will have an on-site team member there that is going to be basically the local property manager, quality assurance, all that good stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome.
So our virtual team will handle a lot of the work, and then the on-site team will handle other work. And so that's the beauty of technology, is that we're able to merge the two together and create a good scenario of a good combination of on-site and virtual help.
Well, it doesn't hurt that you basically started out doing management remotely for the most part, and so it's something that's pretty secondhand to you. So a lot of people
Yeah.
struggle with that when they get started for growth, and it's definitely a discipline that you have to employ to be comfortable doing that. So that's great because that gives you a lot more flexibility, obviously, in terms of
It
opportunities.
it does, and I think it's so great because you realize that no matter what the problem is, you really just have to pick up the phone and solve it. And if I need new cleaners, I need to search them out and call them and interview them and just create a good relationship with them. If I need new maintenance, same thing.
Yeah,
But you pretty quickly realize that if there's an issue, what is going to be the benefit of me being on site, except to maybe coordinate with the guest or make them feel more comfortable? But if I have good team members, they can go and represent me as well, the same way that I would if I was there. And honestly, they're probably going to be better help because they're going to know how to fix the problem. They're going to know how to resolve it quickly. So there's always a way to handle a problem remotely that is probably as good, if not better, than me going there in person.
yeah, I agree. It takes a little bit of work in the beginning because you have to kind of the way I treat it. Even if I have a property that's onboarding that's within driving distance of my where I live, I'm still treating it as if it's across this, in another state.
Yep.
In terms of the things that come up and how they need to be handled. And so, if you treat every single property that way, it's usually easy to plug and play and be able to get comfortable with doing stuff remotely as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you want to be a business owner, and this is the goal, right? If your goal is to be able to scale up to any decent size or any certain size, you need to think that way because if you're trying to be the one to solve every problem and try to drive there and be on site, you're going to lose track of the really important parts of running your business, which is getting new clients, sales and marketing, and finances. How are you tracking your P&L statements? And there's so much as a business owner that we need to be keeping an eye on every day, that if we were trying to do everything, we would fail. I mean, we'd be dropping balls left and right if we tried to do it all today.
Definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
So we also chatted briefly. We're looking. You're looking at hotels now as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of a natural progression, right? You do residential, a lot of you do a variety of different residential, and you realize that one of the biggest downfalls of residential is the appraisal process, right? And even if I take a property or you take a property, Rich, and you renovate the whole inside and you deck it out and you go head to toe, and you're just operating it and it's killing it and it's making a ton of revenue, it's doing really well, and then you go to try to sell it to get the next one, the valuation of your house is still going to be based on the neighbor's house next door, regardless of
Yeah,
whether they're running it as a business or not. And I've been burned a couple of times there where my revenue is much better than anyone around me because I focus on operations and that's what we specialize in. But I still get valued based on the neighbor's house next door that it's all run down, and it's just an appraiser's viewpoint of it. So
yeah,
the concept of, instead of me managing 30 properties all spread out and having the team, the cleaners run here to here to here to here, and maintenance run all over the place, what if I get one building that has one roof, one set of HVAC, one set of plumbing, one Wi-Fi setup, and I can have 18 or 20 or 40 rooms, and then create a really fun experience between the common spaces and the landscaping and the pool. You can really put more investment into those things at scale and be able to operate more efficiently as a management company. And then also by doing the design and the marketing and the operational improvements, the valuation increases in exact relation to the amount that I'm able to increase revenue and lower expenses. So I feel like I have way more control. I feel like I have better operational efficiency with the expenses. And I feel like I have a lot more upside with commercial real estate, and it's in the same industry. It's still hospitality, so it has
yeah,
the same basic underlying needs of guests for everything to be clean and look good and have a fun experience.
yeah. No, I love it. And I've done quite a bit of multifamily like that, where we've done 27 unit buildings. We've converted the whole building to short term rental. But even in multifamily, you're still a little bit restricted on having a direct influence on the value, because they're still looking at historical long-term rents to hang their hat on when they're doing their evaluation. Obviously, with the hotel space, it's the hotel revenue doesn't matter what else is going on. They're looking at that hotel revenue, which is what we do, the short-term rental revenue side. So yeah, I agree. It's a definite natural evolution to kind of look at that as more opportunities. Are you looking in particular areas for those, or any particular markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things that we're looking at. I think another big benefit is the regulation. There's so much regulation that's coming in around residential vacation rentals that's really restricting it. And so you have this big boom of travel. You have all these new travelers coming through Airbnb and through these new sites that are vacation rental sites. And then all of a sudden regulation. So there's a bigger base of demand. And then all of a sudden you cut down the supply with new regulations significantly in markets like Dallas, New York, Madison, Wisconsin. There's a lot of them, but San Diego is restricting very heavily. So they're putting caps in place, and so they're limiting supply. And so we're looking at that and saying, hey, which markets are really strong? Which markets have strong fundamentals but are regulating? That's a great place to come in and get a hotel that's run down, that needs work. We improve the property and process just in time for those regulations to hit and take all the supply out of the market. Now the demand goes up like crazy, and we use the same tenants and design elements that we use in our Airbnbs, which makes it so fun and attractive. And we capture all that new demand just to us. So coastal markets are great. If you can find a place with a view or some water feature, or on a lake, something that is a really unique experience that guests can have. That's really what I'm looking for these days. And so, for instance, there's one we're looking at right now that's up on in the Redwoods in Northern California. And so it's just a really beautiful nature experience that's all around. And we would just be feeding into that experience.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, that really opens up the door for a lot of different locations you can kind of scope out, especially with the regulatory environment being so heavy right now. It creates a lot of opportunities. So very cool.
Yeah.
So what I always like to do, as we're getting closer to the end here, what if there's one piece of advice that you could give the folks that are watching that are looking to get into this or get started, from what you've learned so far in your business, what would that piece of advice be?
I'm so grateful that I took a small bite to start in my journey, and I did that small property. I talk about it all the time, 55,000 for a fourplex. I don't know if you'll ever find anything like that out there now at current prices, but there's still a lot of very reasonably priced, great cash flow properties all over the country, in the center of the country, north, south, rural areas, where you get a chance to underwrite the property. You put a property improvement plan in place. You learn how to get financing. You learn how to sign on the loan docs. You learn how to negotiate with lenders. You learn how to improve and handle different vendors, contractors, roofers, all this stuff. But you learn it in a way where the cash flow is going to be solid. So even if you make mistakes, you have a lot of room for mistakes. And also your risk is much less. I put $7,000 down to buy that property. And so I think it makes it much more attainable for somebody new who's looking at it and saying, oh man, I'm in San Diego. I need to come up with $200,000 to buy a property here. That's a lot of risk. It takes a long time to save up that amount, as opposed to $7,000 or $10,000. You go in and you find a multifamily or a single family that can be a vacation rental in a cheaper market, where you get all the experience, you get to test everything out with way less risk. And then from there, you'll go much, you'll have way more confidence, and you'll take the next deal down faster than you ever could have imagined.
Well, and those of you that have the flexibility, the house hack option is definitely a good way to get started quickly too. So
I think that's great. I know somebody in the Midwest that I really love what he's doing. They're buying duplexes, side-by-side duplexes. There's a lot of these in the Midwest. And to tell you the truth, they're cheaper than single family homes, because as opposed to in San Diego, the multifamilies are so highly valued because people need them to qualify for loans. But in the Midwest, nobody wants to be a landlord when you could just buy your own house And so the single family homes are more expensive than the multifamily. You can buy a duplex, live in one half, rent out the other short-term or long-term, cover your entire mortgage, live for free, and travel the world if you want to because you have no mortgage payment.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, listen, Matt, I appreciate you taking the time today. I'd love to, so I spent some time with you on your podcast. So, what's the best way for folks to reach out or check in with you to see how things are going?
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram at Stay Classy Airbnb Guys. The podcast is about to drop. It's going to be called Failure to Freedom Podcast. And we're talking to entrepreneurs about the fact that you will fail and you will make mistakes on your entrepreneurial journey. Don't let that be the reason why you don't do it. It's going to happen. And as you get more and more experience, you realize that that's what you need to be looking for. You need to go for the mistakes and the failures in order to grow and learn. So don't be afraid of them. And we share a lot of losses and funny experiences in the podcast.
Awesome. So I'll be sure to put your Instagram in the comments so everybody can check that out. Thanks everybody for jumping on this week. As a reminder, B&B Investing Group, we do work with investors to help them grow a scalable short-term rental business. So if you're interested in that, hearing more about our program, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook Messenger. And until then, we'll catch up with everybody next week. Thanks for jumping on. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich. Always great
buddy.
catching up.